Good morning, St. Francis. Good morning, people of God. It is Friday, the 4th day of August, 2023. Friday of the 17th week of the year, the 17th week in Ordinary Time. But today we also honor the memory of St. John Vianney, the Curé d'Ars, the priest from the city of Ars in France, where he lived in the early to mid 1800s. He is the patron saint of parish priests, and so many statues in different parishes or in different seminaries, around the world depict his likeness. And who was he? Well, again, he was a priest who was a good priest, a priest who cared about people and not just about himself or about power or influence or what have you. And in France, in the time that he lived, France didn't know what it wanted. It went from revolution to empire, back to a republic, back to the kings, all over the place. And one of the consequences of all of this was the fact that the church was not held in high regard, because the church was horrible in France. It was filled with graft and power and intrigue and money and what have you. And so the revolution sought to get rid of it and sweep it away. And so to reclaim itself was not something that was very easily done. But the Curé d'Ars, John Vianney, seems to have been able to do so because, again, he was not concerned with power or status or wealth. He was concerned with the welfare of the people for whom he was, a parish priest. And again, how he was concerned most with them was through a very medieval concept of confessing sins again and again. And again, tales of him being in the confessional for 18 hours because people just needed to throw their sins at him left and right. Was there transformation? Was there change of heart so that nobody bothered to come back again to the confessional? It's never ever certain. It doesn't necessarily say. But John Vianney tried his best, to be a good priest, which is why he's a patron saint of parish priests. Again, priests all around the world. And so, again, we remember, we pray, that all priests always be concerned for the welfare of their people, and doing so in a way that is gentle and kind and loving, and not one that can be, haughty or high-handed or forced or what have you. On this day, we continue with the Old Testament reading. Now we move from Exodus into Leviticus, the book of the law. And again, you think there's only 10 commandments? There ain't. There's a lot of things that God asks Israel to do, that if you're going to abide by 10 commandments, you better abide by all of the other 638 laws, or something that's in at least 40, 50 chapters in the book of Leviticus, because this is where God lays out the whole plan for how Israel is supposed to live. We take a look at the 10 commandments, so we think that's it, and it's not. So again, either live by Jesus' command to love one another and let that be enough, or live by all of these rules, because again, Jesus didn't want people to live by all of these rules, because some of them were good and some of them were just a little bit too much, or were good for a time and needed to be transformed into something more. And so what we hear today are the rules on what are the major festivals that Israel was supposed to observe. And they are Passover, of course. It is Pentecost, the 50th day after Passover, when the law was given to Israel. It is the Day of Atonement, one day, to confess Israel's sinfulness to God and what have you. One day, not 40, one day. And so, again, the Jews had it better. And then the Feast of Booths, to help Israel remember that it was a wandering people for 40 years in a desert, living in tents. And it is God who brought them through this desert into the Promised Land. These are the major festivals. It is interesting that the one festival that is not there, that we might think would be there if we know anything about the Jewish calendar, is Rosh Hashanah, is the New Year in September or October, in the month of Tishrei. And that's because, again, you have the combination of two different kinds of cultural understandings about things that will happen over time. Whether you move from an agrarian to a nomadic, kind of lifestyle or what have you. In the nomadic lifestyle, it is the first of the month is Nisan, where the 14th of that month is Passover. But then, as you move into an agrarian lifestyle, is Tishrei at the end of the harvest, where again thanks is given to God for allowing the people to live yet another year in sustenance. And so again, it evolves. But these four major ones, are the ones that God lays down first for Israel to observe. In the gospel today, Jesus is wandering around, comes back, it seems, to Galilee, to Nazareth, or have you, in his own hometown, and everyone is skeptical of who and what he is. If it's not the carpenter's son, or not his brothers and sisters, friends of ours. Again, Jesus' relationships, were there more children that Mary and Joseph had? Perhaps. She needed to be a virgin to have Jesus, not afterwards, although we want her to be a virgin forever. But the whole idea is the town does not really take much stock in him. And why? Well, because he's just one like them. What makes him any different, any more special than anybody else? And it says that he cannot do, much work there. It's hardest often to please, those we are closest to. It's hardest often to please those who know us best. And yet, when we are trying to do the good work that must be done, it is up to the people to realize, that there is good work in everyone, regardless of how well we know them or who they are or where they come from. And when we don't recognize that, again, the power that is God in this world, in our midst, again, is of course kept from us because we refuse, to think of anything more than what we ourselves have set up, for our own ways of understanding life, for our own ways of looking at life in our own small, meager, narrow ways. As believers, we need a broader way of looking at life and looking at ourselves, and looking at what life has to give us, because it's in those ways of looking more broadly, we see the wonder and the glory of God in our midst. A blessed day, St. Francis and people of God. May the Lord give you his peace.